Okay, I'm Bill Hill, and I'm coming to you from sunny North Florida, District 6970. That's the Jacksonville area. It's about 73 degrees, and we enjoy life here in Palm Beach, Florida, and looking forward to connecting with you people from the West Coast and telling you about some of the things we're doing here. Um, there are actually two types of uh, reconnection that I'm going to talk to you about. And one is the simple reconnection, which is person to person, which is easy, where uh, Rotarians and all the other folks who qualify to be alumni self contact one another and meet for coffee or lunch or some sort of other unstructured type of activity. We in District 6970 actually have two um, alumni organizations. One which was created in 2016, and another one that has uh, been created more recently, which is a Rotex alumni club. I'm going to speak to you primarily about uh, what we do in uh, the root. I'm not really familiar too much with the development of the Rotex Alumni Club, but it focuses generally on the activities of the support of the youth exchange program in our district. In other words, the members uh, help with the committee, the district committee, with selection and development of youth exchange activities uh, for inbound and outbounds. There are, in our particular standard Rotary Alumni Club, we have 104 members in our database. Uh, that database is used, it's a password secured Google Drive database. So only certain people have access, about 5 people in our district, uh, because of the protection for youth that the Rotaractors and Interactors that are members of that 104 member group. So what we do, if we could look at that first slide, Debbie, what we do and have done is um, we have focused on, or as Rotary, um, there it is, has asked us to do, focused on Rotary Reconnect Week, which usually occurs in the month of October. And one of the things we've uh, tried to do and has met with some success is to send out on that membership list to all the members who are members of uh, the standard alumni club an invitation to appear at a location. It could be at a restaurant. It could be actually at a Rotary Club, some actual meeting. And we liked that idea because it brings not only the potential alumni exposure to Rotary members, but Rotary members who are not really real familiar with the uh, Alumni Association um, working group. Uh, it's like I say, it was started in 2016, and so it hasn't been with us that long. But if you look at the slide, is we invite all prospective members to come to meet and to discuss uh, what their experience may have been in exposure to Rotary, uh, all having like-minded ideas. And with that, uh, the it is an opportunity for them to speak, uh, um, not for a long time in their description, but to give a brief and hit the high points of what they have gained from that exposure. So that is um, the the has to do with the Rotary Reconnect Week. So if I could move to what uh, what we are very fortunate in this district because uh, we have difficulty in getting all 104 members involved in the activities. And so we have other methods of which we can attract them. We have in our district um, some very distinguished Rotarians who make themselves available to speak at other types of reunions of Rotary organizations. The John Caulfield, who is in the Rotary Club of Jacksonville, is a recipient of the Rotary Alumni Service Award back in the year of the Toronto Convention. He's a former diplomat and has of interest and opportunity of talking about mostly what's going on in the Caribbean. We have two uh, uh, students who are Rotary Peace Fellows who are now in our district are also available to attract potential alumni at various meetings. And here is I've put up the second slide, which is just basically a simple uh, email that goes out to the membership to tell them when, where, and what that's where that's going to take place. So that basically is what I have to offer with regard to the reconnection of element of Rotary alumni activities. So I would open it up to any questions that you may have, and maybe Jim would like to follow up on any ideas he may have that come from South Virginia.
Hey, yeah. Thanks, Bill, for passing, and I'll make a couple comments too, and then we'll kind of open this up for an exchange. I'm Jim Probsdorfer, District 7600 here on the East Coast, southwestern Virginia. It's a rainy day here, and it's about 60 degrees. So, but no snow, Debbie. No snow here at the moment. My little background is I've had an opportunity when I was club president back in the early 90s to get involved in establishing an Interact club at our high school. When I got to be a governor in the 2006-7 timeframe, got involved in establishing a Rotaract club at a university in our town. And then when I served as the district Rotary Foundation chair in 2013 or so, got an opportunity to establish a alumni club. So I've kind of been through all three of those organizations, and I'll just throw out, in my view, we're all in the same boat. We're all just trying to dig out from this pandemic and crawl ourselves back and reinstitute the organizations that we had in place. And I'm talking Interact clubs at the high schools, which took a significant hit. Rotaract clubs, whether at a university or a community, which took a significant hit. And our own Rotary clubs, which are some in hybrid, some are lost, and some are trying to reconstitute. Of course, the RILA program and Youth Exchange took hits as well. So I think it's a question of, as we say, reconnecting, but it's opening up those lines of communication again that existed. And there's no magical list. If you're looking for a magical list that says so-and-so was in this and so-and-so was in that, and let's get them back together again, it's pretty much you gotta dig down into the dirt and find out names and find out locations. So I will I'll show you. Go ahead and put the next slide up, Debbie. Our particular district started a alumni association back in 2013, got chartered the next year, and opened it up to all these categories. And if you kind of think about the history here, initially Alumni was a Rotary Foundation program, and it had reached out to the Rotary Foundation folks, which were Peace Scholars, Ambassadorial Scholars, Group Study Exchange, maybe NID folks, and then gradually got it opened up to our youth services groups. And the Alumni Association left Rotary Foundation ownership and became its own setup with Mike Schwem involved. So this is what our organization does. Each year, we are fortunate that we have a district conference in the fall, which is kind of a good time to have a district conference because you kind of reconstitute yourself in the summer and the spring. And as you go into fall, we start gathering folks up for a district conference. And our organization, our alumni organization, plays a pretty growing part of that district conference where we get involved in breakouts where we talk the Rotary alumni story. We also get involved in a service project, either in conjunction with the district, or we get involved in our own. And we have grown the organization each year by reaching out to individuals that have been involved in Rotary programs and have gotten lost over the years, and somehow they managed to resurface. And we induct at least 10 individuals into the organization every year, to the point where we're probably around 80 or 90. And I can't tell you that we have we have engagement from 80 or 90, but we have gone through about 9 classes now of bringing in around 10 people. So we're around that range. So I will just offer to you again the thought that it's really at the district and the club level that the engagement has got to occur. where you've got to remember the names and get the lists and ask that question of what are you doing now and won't you belong to one of these organizations? And then in our case, as an alumni, we we do have a growing reputation where I will periodically get an email from a club president that said, we just had a program and so here was speaking about their organization, and in the course of that conversation, told us that they were in youth exchange 10 years ago. And bingo, I pick that name up and bring it over to my list and keep track every year so that in the summer of the next year, I reach out to these individuals and they get a special invite to come to the district and be inducted by the RI president's representative into our association. So with that in mind, that's kind of my little background. I think, Debbie, at this point, we probably ought to find out a little bit about Judy and Joyce and Dennis and let them tell us their story. So go ahead and put that next slide up and maybe we can talk about ways to get engaged.
Jim,
So,
I do see that Judy has a question perhaps for you already.
okay, super. Shoot.
Hi, thank you so much, Jim. That the Alumni Association sounds very intriguing and successful. How have you had many of those from the Alumni Association that have transitioned either into Rotaractors and or into members?
Well, first of all, what we're reaching out to is people that have already gone through those organizations and are probably not at the stage in their life where they're going to go back to Rotaract. What we do is try to keep contact with them at least twice a year in the district. But if you're talking about reaching out to current Rotaractors, that's really for the Rotaract clubs to keep those people involved. And so usually that's not somebody I will go after. I will go after a past Rotarian who has, or excuse me, a past Rotaractor who has maybe been president or greatly involved in that club, but now have moved on to another part of their life. And we will reach out to them to be part of the Alumni Association and hopefully to join a Rotary Club. I hope that helps. Anything else, Dennis?
Yeah, Jim, what percentage of these folks actually join clubs? Do you have statistics?
No, I don't have a good statistic. I think you're really not talking about a large percentage that will come back. They'll stay involved quite a bit with the Alumni Association, and obviously we're encouraging them to get involved. But in many cases, it's up to the club to reach out to them. Once we let the club know that so-and-so is in their area, and this might be somebody who appears 10 years after they have been a youth exchange person and they're sitting in the vicinity of New Kent Rotary Club. And so now we tell the New Kent Rotary Club, by the way, this individual was involved in Rotary, reach out to them and try to bring them into your club. So I don't have a good statistic on that because, again, the field is so large that you really don't track, in my case, don't track them from the Alumni Association to join a Rotary Club.
Do they participate in projects?
Yes, and I think that's the key.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're going to in with the Alumni Association, every time we get together, it's with a project, and many of them will show up and get involved in the project hopefully reconnect, share some more stories. We always have a pretty good reception for the alumni every year. So there's shared stories, and then the follow-up really kind of, you lose track at my level and involve now the district clubs to get involved.
I understand. Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. But it's a dog eat dog type of thing, as you well know, trying to track them, keep them, and get them involved and get them to join. And again, now with the pandemic for 3 years, it's been really, really difficult to have that pipeline that goes clear through. So,
I understand.
yeah.
Thank you.
What are some of the projects that you would do, Jim, as far as that would attract alumni?
Okay, well, one thing we have in our district, by the way, is a fairly good Rotaract operation where we invite the Rotaract to come to the district conference as a separate group. They get involved. And so oftentimes the alumni will join with the Rotaractors and do a project. 2 years ago, we put together 10 free libraries, brought them to the conference, and got the Rotaractors and the alumni involved in decorating the free libraries, which went back out to 10 different Rotary clubs for them to put in their area. During the pandemic, we got involved in ordering ponchos for homeless folks, and we had alumni delivering ponchos to various organizations in the local area. Last year, we teamed with the Rotaractors again and did some hygiene kits with half of the project. And then with the other half of the project, we put labels on school books that went to a district, or went to a school district. I think there were 800 books that we put labels on that went to a district to be distributed at schools. So those are some idea. We've had a big success with a project for pets. We brought pet stuff in and
Not President-elect training, right?
So, I mean, that was a lot of fun because, people kind of latched on, thought about their own pets and brought different, either food or toys, and we distributed to the PCCA. So I think it's involved, I think the key is that if you're going to do anything with any of these groups, you got to stick some type of a service project with it. It's nice that you can have maybe a social network and you kind of meet over some type of a social event, but I think the passion is driven by some type of a service project. And if you're trying to reconnect and you're trying to get that pipeline to flow, you got to almost do it with some type of a service project, in my view. Now, we can talk about some of these other things, Debbie, on that slide if you want. You want to put that back up? I lost track of it. I took this right off of the Rotary alumni website. Is if you can reconnect through service projects, fellowship, the opportunity to just sit beside somebody and ask the question of what have you done. We just as a sideline during the breakout that we usually get involved in at the district conference, we actually went virtual. We had a Rotary Peace Scholar about 10 years ago from our district that went on and is now the director of the United States AID program in Ethiopia. And we Zoomed him in from Ethiopia during a breakout, and he talked a little bit about his Peace Scholar, but a little bit about the work that he was doing. And coincidentally, we had a youth exchange young lady that we inducted in the Alumni Association last year, who happened to be in Vietnam teaching English. And we Zoomed her in. And I mean, you want to talk about a breakout where you kind of showed the impact of Rotary around the world. And I think it gave you a good feeling of what we do in Rotary. The third breakout individual was a fella who was club president of one of our clubs, but he was a global grant administrator and went to Italy and set up a skin graft center. And he was actually physically there talking about that. So here's opportunities, particularly in front of the district gathering of about 400 or so folks, to talk about what alumni do in the world. And what it's helped us do in the last 7 or 8 years is give recognition in our district that there are alumni out there that may have been involved in Rotary 10 years ago, but they are still doing important things today, even though they're not even in a Rotary club, but they are committing to service to the community. So that's kind of my spiel, but you can see other things that we do. And I'll ask you, what is Join a Rag?
I don't know.
Rotary Action Group. Yay! Yeah, and that's another thing that we can encourage folks to do, because maybe I'm not so crazy about buying food for pets, but I like to ski, and there's a Rotary Action Group that goes skiing all the time. I mean, can't we do something like that? So there we go. So your thoughts. Let's see, Joyce, I haven't heard you say anything yet, or Andrew.
Well,
Or
I'm kind of a
Jack.
new person here, and so I'm just learning more about alumni. I'm not new to Rotary. I've been president of a couple of clubs, but and was a youth exchange officer. But I'm just learning more about Alumni Association and taking notes about ways to reconnect with.
Yeah.
I wrote down some of our RILA participants, youth exchange students, and prior we give out a good $20,000 a year in scholarships, and so
Super.
so these are some ideas, and plus to check out District 5020 and see what's going on with them. So I'm more of a student than a teacher right now.
Usually what
Likewise.
I do is as I think about the induction ceremony that we hold each year. Like I say, it's done at a reception with the food and drinks, and the president's rep is there, who last year was our past Rotary RI president, Barry Rassin, and we induct about 10 individuals each year. You have to kind of keep some type of control on this. And so I limited around 10. I usually try to reach out to 3 or 4 Rotary Foundation alumni, which could be, a Peace Scholar, and they're rare to find, or an Ambassador Scholar, or maybe a global grant individual. Occasionally you find a GSE team member. And so we try to limit it to that. I try to bring in 2 Rotaractors each year into the Alumni Association, 2 RILAs. And so I'll go back to the RILA chair from the last year or previous year and say, give me the name of 1 or 2 of your top RILA students that went through 2 years ago. And do you still have that connection? And I'll try to bring them in. And then the same with the youth exchange, and they're a little harder to track, but and then occasionally we'll invite an interactor, although I try to kind of stay away too much from bringing in interactors into the Alumni Association, because you've got to go through all kind of checks and balances with that. So that's kind of the induction ceremony. But Andrew, I haven't heard from you yet. What's going on?
So I'm a former Rotary exchange student in 2002, 2003 to the Netherlands from North Central Illinois. Then I was a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholar in 2010 to the American University of Beirut. And the same club sponsored me for both of those things. And I joined a Rotary club. I actually helped charter a Rotary club in Dali in China. It's one of the few Rotary clubs in Red China. They only allow foreigners to join it. They do not allow Chinese to join. The Lions Club allows Chinese to join, and only Chinese can join the Lions Club, and only foreigners can join the Rotary. So it's an interesting experience. Then I was a member in Bahrain of a club, and then my company sent me to South Texas, and I joined the evening club in South Texas in Corpus Christi. Presently, I'm in Germany. My company sent me to Germany because the Germans weren't meeting in person. I went to some meetings in the first neighborhood I lived in here about 6 months ago, but I haven't been to a meeting in about 6 months. And I'd like to, because I'm real close to the border. I'm in Cologne, Germany, and I'm close to the border with the Netherlands. Actually, since I started this Zoom meeting, I actually wrote an email to the Rotex group in the Netherlands and the Rotex group here in Germany to see how I could participate, because the clubs in Texas that I was in, and in China, and China doesn't do Rotary exchange, and neither does Bahrain. They don't do youth exchange, and neither did our clubs in Texas. I don't know why they didn't, because all the clubs in Illinois, when I was growing up, they did. And in Iowa, my dad's in the Rotary in Iowa. He's been the district head of the youth exchange there in Burlington, Iowa, for that district of Southeast Iowa. But some of the countries I've lived in, they don't really have. There's limited options to participate in Rotary, and now that I'm in Germany, COVID is relaxing. It's becoming an
we tend to forget that Rotary's in 200 countries, and when you think about the rules and the culture across the world, it's not the same as I know. I've done some traveling too. So you're absolutely right. And we're very fortunate to be here in the United States with the Rotary that we have. Thank you. Thank you for your background. And how about Dak Madison? What's going on with you?
Yeah, I'm recently accepted the district alumni chair role for District 5450. I am a Rotary alum. I started an Interact club at my high school, and I attended RILA, went back as a junior counselor and senior counselor. So really, really invested in this exact thing that we've been talking about. And what I've really, really been focused on is how do we build the future of Rotary? And a lot of that does have with passing the torch and getting a lot more of our youth involved now. So that's the biggest focus area that I've been trying to have, and just, of course, taking notes from all of the discussion, is how can we build that pipeline to keep folks moving from Interact, Rotaract, RILA into Rotary, but then even further, how do we keep them engaged? So really, really appreciate the full discussions.
Let me kind of caveat a little bit what you said in the standpoint that says, what are the expectations that we have at the district to try to keep the open communication? Because at the district level, at least in my district, we've got a youth services chair, we've got a Interact chair, a Rotaract chair, a RILA chair, and a youth exchange chair. So when you start looking at the district level, the connections need to be made, in my view, with that group that continues to work with the clubs, that says, okay, club, are you sponsoring an Interact club? Are you sponsoring a Rotaract club? How about your participation in RILA? How about a youth exchange individual that you'll submit? And the dialogue to me, has to be strong at that level so that you can expect this progression from passionate interactors who then move on to be passionate RILA or youth exchange, or then become Rotaractors, and then for the club to engage an open line to them to come to the club. I don't know that you can expect the district governor to be the one to have all this happen. And I don't think you can expect the alumni club, the alumni association, to have all of that happen. It's got to be a network all the way down through our organizations. And we've got the structure there. It's just who's asking the question and who's making the connection and
Right.
who's opening up the dialogue. And it has to be all of us. So
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you.
anything else? Bill, you want to say anything? You okay out there? Or down there in Florida?
Well, I'm not. I still don't see my video, but I hear
Well,
you.
Bill, you're going to have to start paying your bills a little bit with the computer, you know.
That's right.
So Jim,
Anything
I
else?
believe that Chris is getting ready to move us all back into the main session here
That's
pretty
right.
quick. So if there's perhaps one more last comment or question, we could probably fit that in before we disappear.
I'll make one more comment if I can, and that deals with we talked about the way to connect online, and I got to admit that's kind of beyond my capability of understanding. But this whole business in our alumni association has a website and a Facebook page. But when we talked about Instagram and LinkedIn and all those things, that's above my pay grade, actually. But I think that's another way that we have got to connect to some of these young folks to get them to stay involved and to connect back to us. So I'm
And
done talking.
I see that Andrew kind of made a comment or question here. He's asking about alumni resources in Europe. You know, how could we provide that? And maybe an overarching question is, what is Rotary International? What can they provide to us in terms of databases or support in districts around the world? What does RI look like with boots on the ground?
Good question. And I don't suppose we'll get it answered because we're all moving, it looks like.
Yeah, so really good question, Andrew. Maybe we can circle back to that somehow.
That'd be wonderful.
Okay, looks like we gotta go, folks. Maybe we'll see you on the flip side.
See you again.
Thank you so much.
But
There's
you know,
Debbie.
we have, as I mentioned in the first session, we have a separate Rotex Alumni Association in our district. So
Can you talk
all the
about what
activity-
Rotex is? I have never heard that term before. And I've been involved in youth a long time.
Sure, Rotex is when the youth exchange students come back, then they become Rotexers. So they are people who have completed an organization which puts together folks that have completed a youth exchange experience.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah. I just hadn't heard that term before. Youth exchange, unfortunately, is not the strongest in our district. It's RILA and then Interact. Youth exchange, we'd have a couple going in, couple going out, and that's about it. We work with Scanex down in Southern California. But we have
And
some
that's been
unique
the case in-
opportunities. I don't know what district you're from, Audrey.
I'm in your district. I'm
Oh.
Irvine.
Then you know about the quarterly gathering of all the youth exchange students in Southern California. Our
I've
own
noticed
club,
that you've had a lot more activities.
yeah, our own club of Huntington Beach for years have been teaching all the youth exchange students on one of those quarters to surf down in Huntington Beach.
Ah,
And they have a
okay.
unique opportunity to stay overnight with Rotarians and then go out. This year they went on a whale watch. And in the past, they've gone out of the sea base on ocean kayaks and things like that. But the neat thing is 50 Melody from 5080 or 5280 in LA put together with other people a train ride for all the youth exchange kids in Southern California and maybe beyond across the country before they go back.
Hmm,
What an
fun.
incredible opportunity for a young person to see America before they go back from their youth exchange experience. But I take it away from you. We're back to Debbie or whoever opens this session. I'm sorry. You brought up youth exchange, and that's just
Well, in
really
that
cool.
connection, I would like to add we do a similar thing in Florida where they have an opportunity to visit in the Florida Keys, and they take an entire week during their spring break and go down to I think it's Key Largo, and then explore and some of the other key islands.
And they're always
That's
encouraged to go to RILA and join and interact if they're on campus. So we keep them in the entire family.
yeah,
And,
sure.
and we do the same thing in our district, although youth exchange has taken significant hits over the last couple of years. We're within striking distance of Washington, D.C., and so we'll take them on tour of various historical sites up in the Washington, D.C. area. So, yeah, from youth exchange, I know that's and what's interesting that I've discovered in our district is as we search out for our alumni association, one of the categories that pops up periodically is youth exchange. They were on a youth exchange 10 years ago. They remember that, and now suddenly they start making a later year connection to Rotary. So I think youth exchange is outstanding in that you keep it going from the standpoint you go to a country and come back. But again, we lose track of them because they're moving on with their careers. And as I just mentioned in the earlier comment, we just inducted into our alumni association a young lady that was in youth exchange. She just finished going to college here at William and Mary, and she went on. She was in Vietnam teaching English, and we had her virtually come back as a breakout leader and talk a little bit about her youth exchange experience. So all of those youth exchange individuals have been significantly impacted in their lives. And maybe not immediately, but somewhere along the line, they'll surface up and tell you what they did and why they did it and how it impacted them. So it's a program that we cannot afford to stop doing.
That's why our club is hybrid. We can still bring in people like Holger Kanak as our keynote speaker during the COVID.
Right.
Well, our youth exchange, they've consolidated all the districts, all 8 districts in Florida into one Florida youth exchange program. It's not by district.
Wow. So how did you guys start this last time? We kind of got off topic here.
Well, we started it with my remarks about potential reconnect activity. There it is there. To maybe invite potential.
What's the date of
candidate.
Reconnect Week?
It's in October,
Okay.
but there's one special day. See, it was Wednesday, October the 5th. this past year.
That's great. How many people came out to that?
There were about 10,
Okay.
but it went out to the uh, the invitation went out to 104 of our members in that uh,
Well, that's
list
about the
of.
way things go. We probably invited 300 today and we got a little under 40.
Yeah,
So, it's tough to get people to take the time to come out to things. I think it's the personal connection. That's why my people came, my incoming governor and
right.
Ryla people, but it's that personal connection to the youth and getting the youth to, promote it
Debbie,
themselves.
you wanna put up the slide that I had, and then we can actually, Debbie, one of these, we need to get you to tell us a little bit about what's going on. But the other part, Lane, of what we as part of our introductions between Bill and myself is I did talk to this slide a little bit to kind of give you a quick summary of what our Alumni Association does. And because we have our district conference in the fall, we align very nicely with Rotary Reconnect Week, Alumni Reconnect Week. And so we focus on bringing our alumni to the district conference, which is usually in October, late September, October timeframe. And we emphasize number one, a breakout. We participate in one of the breakouts at the district conference where we bring in Rotary alumni from different organizations, whether they're Rotary Foundation alumni or a RILA or a youth exchange or whatever. We bring them in. We'll have a service project that we focus on, either our own separate service project, or we do a project in conjunction with the district. For example, we just had our district conference last month. The district project was everybody that came to the district conference was to bring a bag of rice and a bag of beans. And we collected virtually a mountain of beans and rice, and took a couple pictures with this huge amount of packaged rice and beans. And then, as a service project for the alumni, we did we had 800 school books that we posted Rotary stickers in, and those school books went back to one of the school districts in our area that they used for literacy projects. And then we teamed with the Rotaractors, who are also a big part of our district conference, and we did hygiene kits for senior citizens. So we always end up doing the following things at a district conference. We'll set up a display in the House of Friendship. We'll have a breakout session. We'll host a reception, and we'll induct a new class of alumni. And we usually try to bring in around 10 new alumni during that session. And they're usually several from one of the Rotary Foundations, and we usually will make sure we've got a Rotaractor or two, a RILA or two, a youth exchange or two into that. So, and then in the spring, we turn around and usually try to put together a social event in one of the kind of center of our district areas, which is around Williamsburg, Virginia. And then we'll have a second service project. So that's a little bit about what we do in 7600. But I'm going to ask Debbie, who's been very quiet and doing such a fabulous job of trying to get Bill Hill and Jim Probsdorfer through these two breakouts without screwing anything up. Debbie, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing and how you can fit into this.
Well, I appreciate the question, Jim. I, as other attendees have said, am here to learn a lot. I'm so excited. I can't even tell you how excited I am about this frontier ahead of us in youth alumni relations and connectedness. I think it seems like we have some challenges to kind of herd these cats, if you will. I guess I have a question that's been on my mind, and that is, in your experience and in Bill's experience, what kind of support can we count on from Rotary International in regards to, connecting with our alumni, in regards to, support with these various association development? We do not have an alumni chair in our district. And I'm now realizing that that's a real deficiency that we have. So what kind of advice would you offer? What is your experience with Rotary International and the support you receive from them?
From our point of view, if I have one thing to say, Jim, here on that sort of speaks to that, and that is there's a stipend available of $1,000 annually from RI, but it can't be for social activities. It can only be for an approved project. And we've qualified for that on one occasion, and we've been denied a couple of times. So I don't know how you finance some of these activities of the alumni. It's a pay as you go because our association has no dues. Is that the way it is with you, Jim?
Yes, you're right. And that's a good question because you did mention the stipend, and that is out there, but it's pretty hard to get. We did apply and get it one time several years ago. In my district, we have an alumni budget that I submit for every year and so far get approval. It's about $1,200. 2 years ago, and we do not, there are no dues in the Alumni Association, but we developed a cookbook 2 years ago. I guess that was one of the things to think about doing while you're in the middle of a pandemic, is we developed a cookbook, about 30 pages of different recipes that alumni have submitted from around the world. And we worked it through Amazon, where they will put it together, and you can order it through Amazon, or you can have it sent to you and printed and whatever. I don't know all the details of that. So that's brought us a little bit of money. We have found that every time we solicit the alumni for a service project, for example, I did mention at least one of the breakouts where we bought ponchos for homeless folks, and we bought items, cookery items for like establishing a household. And we have found that individuals have very generously sent money to the alumni for us to put in the budget to do that. I have found, if to answer your question, Debbie, on dealing with RI, is everything that we do, I make sure Mike Flem knows what we're doing. And I think over the years that has paid huge dividends, because usually if I need anything from Mike, he's first to respond. So I think it's a matter of keeping RI informed on what you're doing pays dividends quite a bit. And I think, again, if you're trying to get, again, I'll go back to that question about lists. If you're trying to get a magical list, I don't think it exists. And if you're going to get a list, it's not going to be very accurate. So you got to get out of the list mentality and start digging on your own to get the information you need to run an organization with alumni.
You know, Jim, there's
so Jim,
fellowships.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. I was
Go
just,
ahead, Lane.
I was just going to ask a follow-up to that point. You know, let's pretend that we're all just starting from a blank slate in our clubs and our districts. We're just kind of starting from a blank slate. Now we get to put our heads together to develop an alumni program, you know, under the umbrella of our district, and then of course eventually clubs. And it seems to me that a big part of this effort, as we start from scratch, is to develop guidelines for developing a database for our youth. And I understand the youth protection guidelines for those of our youth under 18, but these folks are going to become over 18 eventually. And should we be thinking about guidelines for developing and maintaining a database? Because I think what I hear from many folks is that part of our struggle is reconnecting in the first place. So if we were a little more proactive in maintaining contact information, I'm not suggesting we're pushy or oppressive or harassing. I don't mean that. But as we've heard so many times during this conference, it's really on us to do the outreach. But you can't reach out if you don't have contact information. So how do we best proactively at the district or club level develop and maintain some kind of database that's youth protection appropriate so we can reach out eventually?
One of the things I was going to mention is I made a big push to give out Cliff Dockerman Awards, and you give those out to people that aren't Rotarians, but they're in the list and they're still members. So if you go to the fellowship person who keeps their databases, that may be a way to start. And whether it's scouting or whether it's the yachting club or whatever it is, if they have an award that someone has been given by that organization as a Rotarian award for someone doing something outside of scouting, outside of Rotary, maybe we can get some addition. That's how I got people. I just did a fellowship with our 100-year anniversary and decided to give out a Cliff Dockerman to our president. And in so doing, I had to do some research to find the people that had Cliff Dockerman in our district, the 50 people that were there. And so going to the fellowships may be a possibility of getting some data that RI may not even have.
Well, I've gone to one of the ways I try to reach out to some of our alumni is I will go to the Rotary District Rotary Foundation chair, who has over a couple years worth of lists of individuals whose names have gone forward for scholars, who have been involved in grants. We've got a lady in our zone that does a lot of the NID type of work with the Polio Plus, and I've gotten lists from them of individuals that have gone on a NID operation. I've gone to the RILA chair, who has a pretty good list of high schoolers that have gone to RILA. So, I mean, there are names there. How it all gets put together is a good question. If you go to our DAC-DB in our district, there's a category called alumni. And I've got about 200 names in that. Some of them a little old, Some of them have phone numbers and email addresses, some of them don't. And I can go out to those and maybe I'll get a response and maybe I won't. But you're absolutely right. You gotta start somewhere and you gotta put it somewhere and then go back every time you can and update it. And who's going to do that on any extended basis is pretty hard to do.
Well, we
So I
have
don't
a
have a good
secretary.
answer for you.
We have a
Thank you.
secretary in our among the officers in our alumni club, district alumni club, and what they keep that update. That secretary does keep that update, but the way we get the information to be put in the database is a sort of a tricky thing. We have a service project, which maybe you have as well, which is Rise Up Against Hunger. Are you familiar with that?
Mhm.
No? No, Rise Up Against Hunger. And the rotoractors and interactors get points, public service points, if they participate. And so many of the rotoractors and interactors come to that session where they pack food up and send off to the Hungary. And they get the names of those people who come to that activity and they sign something, say, I agree to join the alumni club, and they give the information to tell it, but it's protected, like I had mentioned, by a Google security um, filter, so that it's not available except to certain people.
You, Audrey, any questions you've got now that you've kind of listened a little bit about youth exchange and some other opportunities? What are your thoughts?
I'm much more interested in learning more and participating. But yeah, unfortunately, Irvine, I love my club, but a lot of it has fallen through the cracks due to COVID. So I guess we need to get cracking on getting reestablished and reconnected with our former Interact Rotaract members. Irvine just started Soka University as a Rotaract club. We mentored the Rotaract club of UC Irvine, which is I believe it's Newport Irvine, that is their sponsor, but they seem to like us a lot because we do a lot of other projects. But just reconnecting with those kids. So yeah, we have our work cut out for us.
We do
Our
not have,
Interact Club, of course, took a good hit during pandemic because the schools closed and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, one of the things in my club we're very fortunate is the principal of the high school is a member of our club. And so when the school started to reopen and the Interact Club was trying to be reconstituted, we just this spring had a project with the Interact Club to put together a little garden. And they had kind of a green space at the high school. And so we put together a little garden and got some interactors to participate in that. And then this fall, we had a second service project with the high school called Flags for Heroes. And we had the Interact Club help us put together 45 flags that we displayed along the roadside by the high school for either veterans or first responders or teachers that we were acknowledging. So in our case with the Interact Club, we're starting to pick it back up from what was a pretty deadly time for us where they weren't meeting. Unfortunately, our Rotaract Club at the university has still not gotten back in the swing of things because of the pandemic. And we have a community Rotaract Club in our area that is still suffering. So it's a long crawl to get all this back, but we're going to keep at it and keep working it.
Well, that's what
And
we found as
we'll
I
be
took over
successful.
Interact and Rotaract during the COVID, is that the schools were just not ready to start their clubs. But when you finally found the youth, they were still meeting on their own without the Rotary. They just didn't let it go, but they were on Instagram and TikTok and had nothing to do with email and us. So one of our youth leaders, young lady, put together a Club Rush video that has been used in a number of the high schools now, that is really good, and can be used to talk about getting the club back up and running, which is the cost. As you know, RI, just unless you re-registered every year, it disappears off the list and you got to start over. That's the thing that we need to work with RI on, is keeping our lists up to date, where some of our best clubs have dropped because they didn't realize they were supposed to register with RI. But that's the key. You got your youth chair, which a lot of our districts have, need to pull together the strengths of RILA, together with the strengths of Interact, together with the strengths of Rotaract, and blend them. And we do that, like you do, Jim, at our district conference, but we also do it at the district assembly when we're training the new incoming presidents. We also have a training program there for Interact and Rotaract there as well. So they're definitely a part of the family at both the assembly, which is in March, and our conference happens to be in May. But that will include the Interactors, Rotaractors, and there will be a strong push on RILA, because that's really the basis of all our youth programs. Is the RILA alumni that come out of there are so pumped about Rotary, not just RILA, and they're ready to work. We just have to not let them sit and put them to work.
Good point. Good point.
So Audrey, I really hear you. I hear you, and you're, I don't know if discouragement's the right word, probably not for you, but as Jim pointed out, this is going to take us a little time. I don't know about you all, but when things started opening up again, I had this idea in my head that, oh, yay, we're back. We can just jump on that tractor and it'll have traction and we can get the scooper going and we're just golden, right? And the engine is finally tuned and we're ready to go. And it just hasn't been that way. And it's not just the youth, it's us too.
You got it.
We have to grant each other grace. And to Jim's point, the time that, we don't want to just ramrod. We want to think stuff through. The landscape, the platforms, the frameworks are different now. And our work is really a lot about doing some matchmaking and aligning these new ways of working, ways of serving with what our youth needs from us. This is not a prescriptive process. This is about tapping into their energy, which I'm here to tell you is still there. It is alive and well. And they just need that knowledge that we are special because we are here for them and we are here to help pave a path with them as collaborators, not as prescribers. And I am amazed, continually amazed at the vision and the ideas and the creativity of our youth. If we just sit down and ask a couple questions and listen to what they have to say, it's so refreshing, it's invigorating. It for me takes anything that used to be stale about service projects we seem to repeat over and over, and all of a sudden there's new ways of doing old things. And it's just incredible to me. And Audrey, I guess I really totally hear you. And I look for ways. I don't have all the answers for sure, but I look for ways to create dialogue, to create a conversation with our kids at these various levels, and get, and refresh the way we do things. We're going to have to do that. We can't do things the way we used to do them. We push back against virtual learning, just like the kids do. But it's here to stay. And, Lane, you talked about doing things in a hybrid format, and I think that's real. And I don't think it's ever going to go away. It's not a bad thing. It just is a new way of doing old things. But I loved your idea about 3 days on Zoom and 3 days in the mountains. Man, that's a model I'd love to duplicate. I'll tell you what.
We'll take a look at RILA5320.org. It'll have all the stuff on how we did it, all the forms. It'll talk about the COVID one we did with 6 days online, and then taking the best of that, the first 3 days online and the next 3 days in the mountains.
So that's a hybrid model if I've ever heard one.
It's definitely hybrid. And listen to the program if you weren't in on it, but the one that Mike and Bridget did from our district, she's doing like multiple districts around the nation with their concept of keeping people in the pipeline, as I mentioned, all the way through 7 years and then a graduation after RILA. It's amazing if we can pull it off. The thing we haven't done, Audrey, is the alumni club or alumni group. We have Dactaby, and the problem with Dactaby for Interact is the kids can't get on. It will not let Interact on Dactaby.
That is a problem.
That's right.
It'll let Rotaract in, it'll let Rotarians in, but it won't let Interact in. So we've had our
right.
Interact group created a Google Doc that it takes them from our Rotary5320.org youth site directly to the Google Doc when we want them to sign up for something. So the kids came up with that.
Yeah,
you know, and it's got a regular little survey about the event. We can put it on our calendar, and then it takes them directly to Google Doc, and they're comfortable with that. And we have an Instagram account. That's something they're familiar with. I really have to get one. I
have one, but
You
it's
know,
like,
that's really what we got to do. We got to meet the kids on their level and listen to them.
I hear you.
And be regular, be flexible. That was the thing we heard. Flexibility is the key. It's not the way we've done it for years and years and years that works. Some of it does, but the kids come up with new wrinkles that work better.
Well, and this is just such a great example of generational diversity, which I think is a form of diversity we really need to nourish. Let's face it, I don't know about you all, but Instagram and TikTok and all that, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's be real. I am afraid, and I'm not accustomed to doing things that scare me. But sometimes we just have to be brave and flip who's teaching and who's learning. And that takes courage in itself, just to flip it and listen to these kids, as you just said, Lane. But we're not gonna push these initiatives forward if we communicate via email. That is dinosaur.
Yep.
Level communication. And I take that personally because I still use a lot of email, but the kids, I have to send the kids a text.
Yep, they want it by text. They do not want email. And everybody on my youth council, they just do not want email.
Yeah, it's sluggish, it's dinosauristic, and we shouldn't take that personally. We grew up in a different communication age. It's just reality. It's just the way it is. But
it's like Zoom. I'd never heard of Zoom before COVID. And now the kids want to meet on Zoom because they don't have to leave their home. They can be a part of the community and make a difference in their own community just by going to their computer, which they're used to.
Yeah,
and I had to learn that.
they're not 100% fans. They'll use it, but they had to go to school that way for a couple years.
What they really wanted, well, they really loved it when we focused on environment. They really want to make a better world. And we're lucky to have beaches, so we can take them to beach parties like Mike does with RILA alumni. Immediately after the class, within a month, they're all down on the beach socializing and having a good time. But that's the kind of thing we got to do. And they came out in June for a gathering at a beach cleanup, and we showed them the Club Rush video, and the kids ran it. All we did, I just tried to find them resources. That's what we can do, is give them the resources, give them the thoughts, the ideas. They're not always the best planners, so you got to come up with the dates and the locations, and then they'll run with it.
Yeah, that's experiential leadership learning is what that is. And
you have to relearn
it's the best
how
way
to work with kids after